What up, gamers? I'm coming to you with a public service announcement. Snoop Dogg himself has a wine. 19 Crimes, Cali Red, Snoop Dogg wine. He's on the cork. Look at him. Look at him there. On the cork.
It's the new challenge. Pick up a motherfucking phone.
Yo, who the fuck is this?
And say shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up.
Bitch.
I don't know who you are.
That's the new challenge, motherfucker.
And I figured since we're talking about a musical act and Snoop Dogg is a musical act, let's break this puppy bad boy out, you know? Hold on, let's get that pop. Bada bing, bada boom. It's pretty good. So yeah, like the title says, we are going through the discography of the Smashing Pumpkins. They have a new album out, and we'll talk about that one too. But we're gonna talk about all of them. So first one up, we got Jish.
Jish? Jish? What kind of a name is Jish?
Or we got Gish. We got Gish. I feel like Gish doesn't get talked about enough. I think it's a very underrated album. It's kind of like the same thing with like Nirvana maybe, where like the later albums are so good that it just overshadows the first one. You know, like everyone talks about Nevermind and In Utero, but they don't talk about Bleach too much. And it's not because that's like a bad album. It's just not as good. Or the ideas they were working with on that album were later refined on later albums. And I kind of feel like that's the deal with Gish. I just think Gish is a really solid album, you know? I don't really think there's a weak track on it. I think it's a very tight track list. There's not really any fluff on there. And Daydream is like one of my favorite Smashing Pumpkins songs of all time. Pretty much any song that has either James or Darcy singing, it's gonna be a bop. It's gonna be a bop. Next up, Siamese Dream.
It's addictive. It shouldn't get you. You hear that shit?
Siamese Dream, you know, what is there to say about it that hasn't already been said? I mean, it's one of the most popular and talked about albums of probably not just the 90s, but just all of our modern music in general. I think it takes a lot of the ideas they were working with on Gish and kind of kicks them up a notch, you know. There's a lot more diverse song topics. The structure of the songs are more intricate. I don't really got much to say about Siamese Dream. I think it's really good. That brings us to Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, the Pumpkins' third album, and arguably, well, I'm not even going to say arguably, I'm just going to say, in my own opinion, their best. And maybe that's a basic bitch opinion or a normie opinion, but I stand by it, you know? That's probably everyone's pick, I imagine. I think it's the best album they've come out with. Yeah, I mean, it's just everyone at the absolute top of their game. Instrumentally is beautiful, intricate. I think this is a high point for Billy's lyricism, which enjoy it while it lasts. Honestly, just above all, this is a really good batch of songs. Like, and it's rare for a double album to turn out this good. But honestly, there's no tracks on this album that really feel like filler. There's not really any tracks I can think of where you're just sitting there waiting for it to end. If you're making a double album, you don't want the listener to get bored, and you don't want them to get like fatigued. And the best way to do that is by, you know, throwing in all of the songs you have, even if they're filler. Either that or, you know, the sounds on the album are all too similar. You're going to get bored if every song ends up sounding the same. And luckily for Melancholy, every song feels pretty different from the last one, and they're arranged in a way to... So you're always hearing something new, you're always hearing this different tone of a song. it's a rare double album where you really don't get fatigued by it. Pair that with, just really good songs, and that's what you get. You get a good double album. You get the best Smashing Pumpkins album. Next up, it's Adore. But I feel Adore is a pretty good follow-up to Melancholy. Like, usually when a band comes out with their best album, the next one, obviously is going to look a little disappointing by comparison. I mean, I'd imagine following up such a highly acclaimed, commercially successful double album that spawned most of your greatest hits would be hard, yet they did a decent job. So, the Pumpkins have had a lot of lineup changes through the years. For this album, their drummer, Jimmy Chamberlain, due to some personal things going on, he was not on this album. And, Billy's always described Jimmy as, his musical soulmate. They've always seemed like they're just on the same level, the same wavelength. And, you can tell even in interviews at the time that the idea of making this album without Jimmy was difficult for Billy.
You achieve a language, with somebody, and then when that person is not there, the language between, everyone is not the same.
And look, Jimmy's not replaceable. Jimmy is one of the greatest drummers of all time, and his impact on previous Pumpkins stuff is pretty apparent. Honestly, I think they kind of took that negative of not having him there, and actually it kind of turned out pretty well. So, both because they're going for a more electronic sound and because of Jimmy's departure, they ended up using a drum machine. And honestly, I think it works out pretty well. It definitely fits with what they're going for on this album. Honestly, I think I probably like Melancholy and Adore almost the same amount. It depends on which day you ask me which one I say is actually better. But yeah, Adore's great. Adore kicks ass. Next up, Machina, the Machines of God. People are pretty split on this. A lot of review publications at the time and even now don't really like this album. Fans of the Pumpkins seem to like it. I'm in the bit of the middle ground. I definitely don't think it's as bad as a lot of critics would say, but I think it's pretty decent. I think there's some pretty decent songs. It's not bad by any means. I'm just a little underwhelmed by it, and it's easily their weakest album up to this point. Part of the reason that it didn't turn out the greatest might have been because, Billy had some really ambitious plans for it, and he had, I think it was like a TV show, like this animated thing that he wanted to go along with it, and there's a lot of story to it, and it was going to be a big grand finale before the Pumpkins broke up, because they knew it was on the horizon, and this was going to be them going out on top and kind of returning to their more grunge ish kind of roots. He wanted it to be another double album, and after the poor sales of Adore, no record label was really interested in that, so his plans kind of had to be changed. So I don't blame him too much for how some of this album turned out, because it's not really what he wanted it to be. Next up, Machina 2, The Friends and Enemies of Modern Music. Now, going into Machina, I've heard that album was kind of bad, but nowhere near as bad as Machina 2. I heard Machina 2 was just, garbage. It only exists in, low-quality bootlegs. It's just leftovers from the first Machina that weren't even good enough for that album. But I'm going to be honest here. I kind of really like Machina 2. I think I like it more than Machina 1. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't really know how Machina 2 is regarded within the Smashing Pumpkins community, but I really like it. I think it's a pretty good album. Yeah, the mixing is a little rough. But I think that kind of works out in its favor here. You know, they're trying to go back to a more raw, early sound, and I think the mixing actually kind of aids in that. Zeitgeist. Hashtag get Zeitgeist on Spotify. I don't know why it's not on Spotify, but it's not.
Fuck anybody who hates Zeitgeist.
This album came out after the Smashing Pumpkins were disbanded for like a few years now. I want to think it was about 6 or 7 by the time that Zeitgeist came out. And instead of having all 4 members, it was just, Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlain. It's kind of hit or miss. There's some songs I kind of like on it, like Tarantula and Bleeding the Orchid and 7 Shades of Black and Doomsday Clock. I kind of like that one. And I think United States was pretty decent, if I remember correctly. Everything else was either kind of not, or it was mediocre enough that I don't remember it, or it sticks out in my mind as being bad. I don't even think the Pumpkins themselves really look back on it all that fondly. They never play any songs from Zeitgeist live anymore. It kind of seems like it just got forgotten. Which, I mean, it's not that bad. It's not bad enough that you just throw it away and never talk about it again. I think there's definitely some merit to it. I think Billy was definitely trying to say something with the album and a lot of the promotional images around it. So, yeah, Zeitgeist has its moments, but as a unit altogether, a little shaky. This brings us to Oceania, right? Oceania. I don't know. So this is the first Smashing Pumpkins album to only have one founding member in the band at this point, and that's Billy Corgan. Same for the album that came after it. It's just Billy Corgan and kind of just some other musicians he's working with. No Darcy, no James, no Jimmy. And in this era of the band, I think it's labeled, Billy Corgan Experience a lot. And it brings up an interesting question, at what point is a band no longer that same band, like through people leaving? How many original members need to still be in the band for it to be considered that band anymore? You could look at something like Queens of the Stone Age, which almost every album has some sort of change up in the lineup of members of the band. But at the same time, the first album was pretty much just recorded by Josh and his drummer Alfredo Hernandez. So when you think about it, it's always kind of just been Josh and a revolving door of talented musicians that he likes. An argument could be made there that band is Josh. And an argument could be made that Smashing Pumpkins is Billy Corgan. And it's definitely not Smashing Pumpkins without him, but I don't really think it's that same band when it's only him. That being said, I do like Oceania, but I think it's able to still kind of maintain the essence of Smashing Pumpkins still, It's good, but it doesn't stick with me too much, There's a couple tracks I go back to now and then, but a lot of them, I remember enjoying them, but they don't really stick out in my head. Next up, Monuments to an Elegy. Should also mention at this point that during this album and during Oceania, Billy Corgan was working with a guy named Jeff Schroeder, and I like to think of the pairing of them two as being similar to that of like Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Like, shit, that camera turned off. All right, we're back. But like I was saying, Jeff Schroeder and Billy Corgan is a partnership that I view as, akin to like a Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I think both of those are duos that work very well together. I think they're both on like a same level, and that makes the music they work on better. So I'm pro Jeff Schroeder. I'll say that. And Monuments to an Elegy, it's decent. I like it. That being said, there's still a couple that are kind of, meh. But Being Beige, Tiberius, there's some pretty decent songs on here. I'll say this. This is not the moment to run out of booze. This is the album of the reunited Pumpkins. So that's not the full lineup, but it's James Iha back, and it is Jimmy Chamberlain back. No Darcy, unfortunately. But that being said, they kept Jeff Schroeder around. And when they announced that new lineup, I thought, hey, that's pretty good, This seems respectful to both fans of old Pumpkins and, more recent Oceania Monuments kind of fans, which I am of both. I am of both camps. I thought that was a pretty good band lineup, You got a little bit of the old, you got a little bit of the new there. So I kind of went into this well, what do I call this? Is it... Because Shiny and Oh So Bright is the name of the series of albums. So is it called No Past, No Future, No Sun? Or do I don't know what, I don't care. We're gonna call it Shiny. We're calling it Shiny. And it's a pretty tight, 8 tracks. In those 8 tracks, there's none that I would really call bad. But there's some great ones, like Solara, which sounds a lot like if you just mixed Zero and Bullet with Butterfly Wings. And then there's Seek and Destroy is another highlight. Shiny's not so bad. Again, there's no songs on it that are like offensively bad. But, and I couldn't really put it into words for the longest time, but something just felt off. Something didn't feel right. The songs weren't bad, but somehow I just felt bad. I don't get it. It's not a bad album, but it's kind of just okay. But even then, I was still excited for Shiny and Oh So Bright Volume 2, because this, Volume 1 was, to me, more so just felt like, hey, these are a bunch of guys that haven't played together in a long time. This is essentially just them kind of getting back into the groove. The next album after this is going to get better. This is kind of just them working out the kinks. This is them kind of getting back on their A game. And sure, these songs are kind of meh, but they're getting better. And these next songs on this next album are going to be great. Which brings us to Seer. I noticed it's not called Shiny and Oh So Bright Volume 2/Seer. They seem to have dropped that out of the title completely. I don't really get that. Thank you for titling the album something short this time. So I'll be honest here. I was planning on filming and editing and getting this video out a lot sooner. And my original plan was to end the video by listening to the ungodly number of singles released for this new Seer album. But I thought, I'd listen to those songs and then kind of give my opinion on where I thought things were going. But I've procrastinated so long that now the album is just out. So we might as well just talk about the album now.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
I'd also like to mention that of all of the notes I've written for all the albums, I have the most to say about Seer. So Seer is another double album. This is 20 songs, and I don't think I like it. It's not offensively bad. None of these songs on this album are actively bad or offensively bad. They're more so offensive because of just how mediocre they are. And it's like what I was saying, and I hate to compare it to Melancholy, but when discussing why one double album fails, sometimes you got to compare it to a double album that succeeds. And it just so happens that Melancholy is maybe the best example of a double album I can think of. One thing Melancholy does right, as I've mentioned already, is it's very diverse. You don't get bored sitting through Melancholy. I was struggling to even make it halfway through Seer. The album starts out decently strong. And what I mean by that is it holds my attention enough because the first couple songs sound diverse enough that I can even tell them apart. And then we get like midway through the album, and then especially the back end of it is just, it becomes a slog. And a lot of people are kind of being like, oh, you don't like this album because it has synths on it. I don't care about the synths, right? If a band is coming out with a new album, I want them to advance their sound. Like, I want their identity, the core essence of that band to stay the same. But I want them to venture out into new artistic endeavors. You know, like, look at Adore coming out right after Melancholy. That is a huge stylistic shift. And it's an example of it working. Like, it turned out well. And I was very welcoming of that stylistic shift. Look at Arctic Monkeys, for instance. Every album of theirs is a completely different sound than the last one. And I encourage that. So I have no problem with the synths. And the thing is, this album isn't even that long. It's just under 80 minutes. You can fit that on one CD. It's not that long. Yet it feels so much longer. It was such a pain to get through this album. Whoops, looks like I forgot to do that part at the end of the video where I rank all of the Smashing Pumpkins albums from worst to best, and also my discussion of Seer was cut down tremendously because it was really long and rambly and didn't make a lot of sense, so let's fix that right now. Number 11, Seer. I'd say this is pretty much on par with No Past, No Present, No Sun, whatever it's called. At least No Present, No Past, No Future, whatever, No Sun. At least that had some really good instrumental work from James and Jimmy and Jeff that I could appreciate and sounded really cool. Seer doesn't have that because every song sounds the same. And also that other album's better because it is way shorter and not an overlong, bloated mistake of an album. That's really mean. I don't mean to be that hard on Seer. It's just its mediocrity angers me so much. I could listen to like almost any Smashing Pumpkins song in the past and really get something from Billy's vocals or the lyrics. Like it would invoke a feeling at least. This gives me nothing. I gain nothing from any track off of Seer. Number 10, Shiny and Oh So Bright. Like I said, this one isn't too great, but at least it's better than Seer, and it's a lot shorter, so I appreciate that. Number 9, we're gonna keep this short because there's no reason for me to just repeat everything I said in the video. Zeitgeist. Not terrible. Number 8, Machina. Again, not terrible. Pretty decent. Number 7, Oceania. It doesn't always stick with me all that much. What the fuck? It really doesn't leave a lasting impact on me, but I admit that it's good. Number 6, Monuments. I kind of like this one. I think it's good. Number 5, Machina 2. Like I said, Machina 2 kicks ass. Number 4, Gish. It's really good. Number 3 is Siamese Dream. This placement probably upsets a lot of people, but I want you to know that my number 3, 2, and 1 are all very, very close to each other. To the point where my number 1 and number 2 are interchangeable on a daily basis. I go back and forth almost every day. Which brings us to number 2, Adore. Adore is pretty great. It's a really great album. It's awesome. Number 1 is Melancholy. Like I said, I go back and forth on almost a daily basis of if I like Melancholy more or if I like Adore more. On this particular day, I'm gonna say Melancholy. That's about it for the video.